Hey Merfolk fans, I'm Joe. Thanks very much for joining me today. If you'd like to support my channel, please check out the link above to my Patreon page. I'm here with round 4 of a Modern League, currently sitting at 3-0. Opponent won the die roll. Opponent also has this mythic avatar, always a little intimidating. And this is a pretty nice opening hand. The opponent kept 7 as well. So it looks like blue-white control, potentially a very long match, so get comfortable, guys. Gonna open up with AEther Vial. Opponent's going to Spell Pierce it. Yuck. Who plays Spell Pierce in the main? That is ridiculous. So possibly not blue-white control, but some other build that runs Spell Pierce, maybe some combo deck or something. But there's a Plains, so maybe it is blue-white control still. All I can do this turn is play out Relic, start chipping away at the opponent's graveyard. Okay, so definitely blue-white control with Spell Pierce on turn 1. These Force of Negations hopefully will come in handy. I'm going to go ahead and start getting in for damage now with these Mutavaults. If the opponent wants to path them, it's great because we need blue mana anyway. And they do. So there's an island for us. No play on their turn 3 main phase. Actually, they missed a land. That was their turn 4. Let's go ahead and get rid of that Path to Exile, getting good value out of our main deck Relic. All right, so here again, I'm just going to get in with the Mutavault. Same idea. I'm sort of okay with them ramping us and thinning our deck. We can hold up Trickster and Force of Negation. Opponent again kind of passing through here. Oh, but they choose to stop and play Teferi. I'm definitely going to counter that guy. We've got 2 lords, so I think I'm going to want to keep them to increase my clock. I pitched the Trickster. It's kind of a tricky decision. I could have flashed in the Trickster, rather, and pitched one of these lords. Wasn't sure which was the best option, but I do like having lords in the matchup, and I do like keeping Force of Negation in the second Force in hand for other Planeswalkers that they might have. Well, Waterlogged Grove is a potential redraw down the line, but I can play one of these lords with them tapped out, activate Mutavault, and swing in. Still have mana up to crack Relic if necessary, though. With the opponent on an empty graveyard, probably not going to have to do that this turn. So opponent ousts the lord, means it is put into my library second from the top. So I'm going to be redrawing that thing soon. And they're going to opt. Gonna trim that oust with opt on the stack. And they found their 4th land, so good for them. Good for me that I drew a Silvergill. That's pretty sweet. Hopefully after that Spell Pierce, they're out of counter magic. Revealed the Lord, drew a Lord. Let's keep getting in with this Mutavault. I like that plan. This was the Lord that was put on top of my library with oust. You can see we've trimmed a lot of good stuff from their graveyard with Relic. It's been a Path, an Oust, a Spell Pierce, an Opt. So not live in every matchup. For example, it wouldn't have been good against Hardened Scales Affinity, but it was good against Esper Spells, and it was good against Grixis Delver, and now it's good against Blue-White Control. So been feeling pretty good about the main deck Relics. All right, gonna Path to Exile my Silvergill. Doesn't seem amazing. Actually, it seems kind of amazing for us. Let's get those paths out of the opponent's hand. So, no 5th land drop. We draw another way to draw more cards with another Relic. Let's activate Mutavault. They can't block with Celestial Colonnade yet, so they have to be running out of Path to Exiles, I believe. Yeah, they've already used 2 of them and an Oust. I'm going to follow up with the Relic and just maybe draw some cards on the opponent's end step. There is the 3rd Path to Exile on my Mutavault. And with the 2nd Relic, we can trim that path from the graveyard. Okay, there's a 5th land. It's a Field of Ruin. So cycle the Waterlogged Grove. Drew a land, but we had to draw through that anyway. And then I'll go ahead and cycle one of these Relics. We definitely don't need both of them on board. So helping draw through that pocket of lands in the deck. Hit a 3rd Relic. And since we have no creatures on board here, seems like a good opportunity to try to get some going. I chose to not counter their Cryptic Command. Sometimes you want to fight over spells that draw them cards, because, you know, this kind of a matchup ends up being a battle over resources. But Force of Negation is much more important to deal with, you know, things like Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, that can just turn their position from losing to winning in a second. We've got these relics, so we get to keep their graveyard empty, play the second relic, and just pass the turn. So they go for Jace, and I've got the mana up, so I'm just going to hard cast Force of Negation. Hopefully they don't have another Spell Pierce, and it looks like they don't. They'll follow up with an Opt, which I'll get to get rid of with Relic. Now we've got a lot of creatures in the deck. Hopefully we start drawing some of them. Okay, so I'm going to take this window of opportunity to just play out both of these lords. Present a healthy clock. Okay, blue-white does play some number of Wraths, so that's a little bit annoying. Crack one of these relics. And Master of Waves is pretty good, but we've got 0 devotion currently. And I keep drawing lands. Crack the second relic to try to get more devotion. Here's a Benthic Biomancer. Going to follow it up with Master of Waves. And we'll get a redraw next turn, hopefully with Benthic Biomancer. Okay, so here's Narset. I think the opponent whiffed on that Narset activation. Gonna get in with everybody here. They don't have a lot of cards in hand, so I'm not putting them on Snapcaster to come in and snipe the Master. All right, and with them apparently having nothing to do in response to my attack, they probably have nothing to do in response to a loot here, so go ahead and activate Benthic Biomancer's Adapt ability. Draw another Silvergill Adept and pitch one of these lands. So you can see the value in Benthic Biomancer here. Basically a Silvergill Adept, just drawing us into more gas. Okay, here's another Narset. I forgot to say, I did choose to kill Narset last turn. I attacked her with 1 elemental and with Ben, because she had 3 counters on her, and the opponent took 4, going down to 6. I think the opponent did not whiff again here. They drew a Teferi Time Raveler, which can be super annoying, but we've got a lot of pressure here, and I don't know that Teferi bouncing this Master of Waves is going to be enough. Still, it's pretty strong. They get to bounce him and draw a card. So I think I drew a Mutavault for the turn. I chose to kill Teferi while I had the opportunity. The opponent is going to get to activate Narset again. I have to be pretty careful playing around Narset because it says each opponent can't draw more than 1 card each turn. So running out these Silvergill Adepts just seems kind of bad. Let's try to kill Narset first, and then run out our Silvergill Adepts. Reestablish our elementals here. Opponent takes down Narset again and just finds an Opt. So not super scary. And they pass the turn. So Lord's pretty good just because it plays around, you know, Snapcaster blocks, that kind of stuff. Opponent thinks, taps, thinks. They decide to go with Cryptic, bouncing Master of Waves, so they're getting into sort of desperation mode here. I'm going to activate Mutavault, kill Narset, which will allow me to start drawing more cards again, and hit the opponent for 2. So play Silvergill Adept number 1, and with the opponent at 4 life, and drawing that Trickster, we definitely don't need to commit anything else to the board right now. Field of Ruin is going to kill Mutavault. What is the opponent going to do with their 4 mana here? Okay, so a second Supreme Verdict. Pretty rough, but I do have a Trickster in hand I get to throw down onto the battlefield right away. AEther Vial is super dead. Play Silvergill, reveal Master of Waves. Lord of Atlantis. I'm going to play it. It could be considered overextending, but I'm going to get in for 4. Takes the opponent off of any fetch lands. Hit them for 3. They're going to go down to 1. And definitely no need to play out the Master of Waves here. I believe the opponent followed up with Snapcaster Supreme Verdict, which is annoying, but we've got more resources. Totally possible I shouldn't have played out the Lord there. I could have just swung and got them down to 2. Still would have had 2 lethal threats on board. And at this point, if I had a Lord, I could have gotten a lot more elementals from Master of Waves. But as it stands, you know, this is also lethal threat. So Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, is annoying because he gets to bury Master of Waves. But fortunately, I drew a creature. He's going to draw another card. Opponent's getting a lot of card draw going. Gets to brainstorm with Jace. So this was pretty worrying, actually. Okay, he's going to untap lands. Still doesn't have enough to block with Celestial Colonnade, though. So I'm going to bring in this Trickster here. Hope that in the 5 cards in their hand, they don't have much they can do. Lord seems pretty good, so I'm going to try to play that guy. I did tick up AEther Vial because I know the Master of Waves is buried in the top of the deck, ready to come back. We're going to see Snapcaster Mage going for Opt. If we look at their graveyard, I guess they didn't have many better choices. They had Cryptic Command, which they don't have mana for, or just the Opt. So they did cast the Opt, looking for an answer. I believe they bottomed it and didn't have anything that they could do. So I got in here, obviously with them at 1, the most important thing is just killing them, and they didn't have a response to my attack in all 5 cards in their hand, so it was a pretty close call against blue-white. But I was happy to get there in game 1. Let's go ahead and see how game 2 went. All right, back for game 2. Obviously, the opponent's going to be on the play this time since they lost game 1. Unfortunately, have to mulligan. Opponent also mulliganed, so not the end of the world. And this is a keep. We'd rather have AEther Vial, but at least we can play cards. Opponent kept. Silvergill will go to the top for sure. And before we get into things, let me go ahead and show you guys how I sideboarded for this. It's still a bit of a work in progress. Now that we have, well, I've got main deck relics, and we've got Force of Negation, some new tools in the deck. I'm still trying, and of course, blue-white has new tools in their deck, and they've kind of restructured a little bit. So let me go over what I took out, what I brought in, and what I might do differently moving forward. So I cut 2 Master of Waves because, they seem weak to all of the removal that blue-white plays. They can bounce it with their Planeswalkers, they can kill it with Path or with Oust, they can hit it with Detention Sphere. And since it's kind of expensive, I figured, all right, I'll trim back on Master of Waves. I cut 2 Spreading Seas, leaving 2 in. There was a certain point where we would definitely have cut all of our Spreading Seas, with the thought being that they already give us access to Island Walk. But one of their primary win conditions is attacking with Celestial Colonnade. And if you can hit Celestial Colonnade with Spreading Seas, it's a pretty big win for us. So I leave a couple of those in. Took only 2 out. I took 2 islands out on the draw, which I think is definitely correct because between being on the draw and Path to Exile ramping us, we're going to have lands against blue-white. So I always trim 1 land on the draw against pretty much every matchup. I just trim 1 extra against them on the draw. I actually think that I might want to trim 3 on the draw against them and 2 on the play. It's something I'll be testing out in the near future because as you get beyond turn 6, 7, 8, the last thing you want is to be drawing lands, and every land that we trim up front is 1 fewer land that we'll have in the deck to draw. And I cut back on 2 of the relics, so that ultimately was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 cards out, and then I brought in 4 Deprives and 4 Phyrexian Revokers. They have a lot of Planeswalkers. Phyrexian Revoker, great to turn those guys off. Even if it's just temporary, we get to get in for some more damage. They don't get to bounce our creatures and draw extra cards with Narset. So that was the plan. Moving forward, I think I'm going to be prioritizing Relic a little bit higher than I did in this match because I believe that blue-white is back on the full 4 Snapcasters. In which case, we definitely want to be able to interact with their graveyard and keep it empty so that they can't, flash back things like they did last game, flashing back Supreme Verdict late in the game. That was pretty rough. So I'd leave in, or at least, have post-board the 4 relics. And I don't think that trimming on Master of Waves is as good an idea as I thought here. Since the games do go really long, we want our top decks to be as valuable as possible. And even if this guy does get answered, sometimes it's only temporary, like Teferi's bouncing him. You get to just replay him. And as the game goes longer, we want to be closer to like a Jund style deck where we have powerful top decks that can win the game, and less like a Goblins deck that's just going to be top decking, you know, Legion Loyalist and stuff like that. So I would leave in all the Master of Waves, I would leave in all the relics. I might bring in a Singleton Echoing Truth. It can help us in response to a Supreme Verdict, especially if we can bounce like a couple of Silvergills back to our hand. We can redeploy our creatures while also drawing cards. Echoing Truth can also put a powerful Planeswalker back in their hand if we draw a counter spell, and then we can counter it when they try to replay it. Spreading Seas, potentially not as necessary if we're on the front foot. If we're getting beaten down by Celestial Colonnade, odds are we're already kind of in a losing position. So in order to make space for some of these strategies that I'm discussing here, I think I would probably just trim back on the Spreading Seas. As I mentioned, still a work in progress, but that's the plan that I went with for this round. Okay, tapped Hallowed Fountain for the opponent's turn 1. Drew a Silvergill, which I had scryed to the top. And I'll go ahead and attack with Benthic Biomancer. Now, I could choose to adapt here, and I might, in another situation against blue-white control, if I had like an extra land to pitch or something that I didn't really need in hand, maybe a Master of Waves, because just punching in for 2 with Benthic Biomancer while improving the quality of your hand with the loot can be pretty strong. And if they use like a Path to Exile on him, it's a win for us. Second main phase, I'm going to go ahead and play the Silvergill Adept. I revealed the other Benthic Biomancer, hopefully draw another blue land off of the Silvergill Adept. Opponent did not have a counterspell, so that was pretty great. Silvergill on the board. Opponent goes for Timely Reinforcements, and I wasn't really feeling that. I didn't like the life gain. I didn't like the creatures. Although in hindsight, it's possible I should have let this resolve. I could have followed up with Waterlogged Grove, play a Master of the Pearl Trident, and cracked in for 5 Island Walk. Pretty much just negating their life gain here. I had another Lord if they removed the first Lord, still sitting back on Force of Negation, potentially with Ben to pitch. So countering this might have been a little bit hasty. Again, this is a new tool in our deck, and I know I'm personally still trying to learn how to make the best use of it. So I chose to adapt this Ben here. Pitch the extra island. To restate, the idea is if we can boost our onboard power without committing more cards, I think that's typically going to be the best approach. Since the opponent is going into their turn 4, I didn't feel comfortable committing an extra Ben to the board. But you guys can leave your comments down below. I wonder, in these newer builds of blue-white, if we should commit a little more heavily earlier in the game than in the past. I don't really see a justification for that. But if you guys have your own thoughts, please share down below. It's possible that without them already on 2 white sources that I should have taken the risk of slightly overextending. So I untapped, drew an island for the turn. Gonna get in with these guys. I get the opponent to use a Path to Exile on an already adapted Benthic Biomancer. Opponent's down to 3 cards. They're gonna take 2 here. And now, since they left me with only 1 creature, I felt comfortable deploying Ben, my second Ben. So if an opponent tries to Field of Ruin you, you should always think about if there are opportunities for you to make use of that mana before the land goes away. In this case, I get to use Mutavault's colorless mana to cycle this Waterlogged Grove, and once the Mutavault is replaced with another island, I'll still have double blue up to counter anything that the opponent might want to play next turn. So there is their second white source, and there's a potential third white source. During their end step, I'm going to try to adapt Benthic Biomancer. Why not take the opportunity to do that now? And I'll pitch that island. So you guys have seen already in this game, I've had a redraw with 1 Ben, 2 Bens, 1 Waterlogged Grove, and I've got another one ready to go. So going to keep attacking in here. You can see our resources at this point are pretty balanced. 3 cards in their hand, 3 cards in our hand. See a Snapcaster here, and Snapcaster Path to Exile means that they basically 2-for-1 us, killing both of our creatures. So even though I'd rather save this Deprive for a Teferi or something, I felt I had to use it there. In hindsight, I probably would have wanted to play out one of these lords, particularly to play around the Snapcaster block blowout. In this case, if I play the Lord and then they play Snapcaster, they can path the Lord and trade with one of my creatures. I would still get in with one of the attackers. Snapcaster would die, and I'd still have Deprive in hand with mana up. As it went, though, I chose to keep some creatures in hand to be able to rebuild. No Deprive, though, and just have to pass the turn. Opponent goes for Jace, and I could potentially draw into a Force of Negation, so I choose to crack the Waterlogged Grove. Drew another Lord, which is not terrible, but at this point I'd love to have some counter spells. Spreading Seas, not the best draw here. I'm going to play out a Lord. Try to kill this Jace, because if the opponent untaps and wraths, then with Jace on the board, then I've effectively lost. Now, it's difficult because they're at 9, and hitting them for 6 would take them down to 3, allowing me to potentially lean pretty hard. Now, playing Spreading Seas here goes against one of my strategic points that I discussed while looking at the sideboard. Spreading Seas should be reserved for Celestial Colonnade because it's one of their only real threats as the games go longer. It's one of their only ways to close out games quickly. The clock becomes an issue in these matches very frequently, and if you can make them have to activate like 8 more Planeswalkers to win, you might just win on the clock. So you should save Spreading Seas for Celestial Colonnade. I got greedy and chose to run it out there. Drew an AEther Vial. Opponent cracks Flooded Strand, which is not a very good sign. Okay, so Supreme Verdict wipes away my board. So the attack on Jace was the correct call. Double AEther Vial back-to-back draws is miserable. I'm going to play out these 2 lords. Hopefully the opponent has nothing. I can draw another lord and just win. Okay, little Teferi gets to bounce one of my lords. They get to path the other one, so I'm drawing air here, and the opponent is just drawing straight gas. There's that Celestial Colonnade right on time after I play my Spreading Seas. I drew a 3rd AEther Vial, play out the Lord that was bounced, play out a 2nd AEther Vial. Okay, so he can cast sorceries until the end of turn. Jeez. So the last, 3 of the opponents, or 4 of the opponent's last 5 cards were, the last few cards were Supreme Verdict, Path, Celestial Colonnade, and both Teferis. And I drew 3 AEther Vials. So he bounces that Lord, buries him into the deck, rather. So tick up both AEther Vials. Relic, let's get rid of all that garbage right away. Trickster's something, but, how do I even climb out of this now? They've got Celestial Colonnade to protect their Planeswalkers. I can't even... I should have played Trickster on my own turn because Teferi turns off instant speed effects, so I can't flash in Trickster. Okay, take both of these up, and I drew a creature, so there's some small amount of hope. Restoration Angel. Don't really care about that right now because my life total is really high. But they keep drawing cards off these Teferis. Couldn't believe how hot this guy was drawing. I need to look at this again. It was Supreme Verdict, Path, Celestial Colonnade, Restoration Angel, Narset, Teferi, Teferi. And what did he just reveal off of Narset? A Cryptic Command. Oh, it's so painful. Alright, so I've got no choice but to vial these guys in and hope that I draw gas. I know the opponent has a Cryptic Command, so the only thing I could hope to draw is maybe a Deprive or something. I draw for Phyrexian Revoker, which can turn off one of these guys, but if I turn off one, the other one can bounce it, so I'm really kind of dead here. Opponent taps and draws. I'm going to pause on their upkeep, I think, and flash in, naming the big Teferi. Opponent gets a timely reinforcements. They're going to go up from 8 life to 14 life. Bounce the Phyrexian Revoker with little Teferi. Draw a card with big Teferi. And this is what blue-white does. And as mentioned, they get to close things out really quickly with Celestial Colonnade. I'm pretty sure Restoration Angel is just like a singleton in the sideboard. So this game was really disappointing. I drew those 3 Aether Vials in a row. Silvergill, gonna put this guy in right now, but I forgot that Narset is out. It's... When I did that, I decided it was just time to give up. Half the time, I remember that Narset doesn't let me draw extra cards, and half the time I remember, half the time I forget. There's so many effects in our deck now that let us draw an extra card. You've got Waterlogged Grove, Relic of Progenitus, Silvergill Adept, Spreading Seas. I feel like I'm forgetting one. But anyhow, if you do any of that on your own turn with Narset out, you're just going to not get value. So I could have just waited till their turn and vialed in Silvergill Adept, but I messed up. Very frustrating end of that game, and I just scooped there. So 1-1 right now in this match. Let's go ahead to game 3 and see how everything concluded. All right, we're back for game 3 against blue-white control. You know, we're pretty decently set up to fight blue-white control. Like, it's a decent matchup for us, but I just dislike it because it always takes, you know, like an hour. So I'm going to keep this 7. It seems pretty decent. Open up with Relic, and opponent has their Colonnade. So Revoker is a decent draw, but on 2 lands, we might get a little bit backed up. I'm going to get this Lord out onto the table. There's nothing I really want to deprive on their second turn. Oust is kind of whatever. We can go ahead and get rid of that with Relic. Another land is pretty great. Now I can leave up Deprive and Merfolk Trickster. Okay, flash in Trickster on the opponent's end step. I'm going to chip in with this guy. We see a Snapcaster just on Ambush Viper duty, which is sort of okay. I let that resolve. Get rid of the Snapcaster, and this was a little bit passive on my part. I don't have any flash effects, and I'm just leaving up Deprive in case the opponent casts a big Planeswalker. But I just wasted my turn basically there. It's a tough spot to be in. With an extra land that I just drew, though, now I can play out one of my creatures. Path is fine. It frees up our mana a little bit more. We get to get rid of that. So resources are pretty well balanced at this point. They go for Jace. I'm going to counter that. All right, so as you can see, I've got 4 cards currently. Play that land down to 3, and we both have three cards in hand. Okay, opponent goes for Teferi Time Raveler. I probably should have played 2 creatures out. When we get so low on cards, like down to 3 cards, we can't put the opponent on like exact things like a Wrath. So if we play both cards out and they get Wrath, you know, that's rough, but I've got a redraw with Relic, I've got a redraw with Waterlogged Grove. As things stand now, I don't have another attacker to get in at Teferi. So basically making him that much more powerful by keeping an empty board. Okay, we cycle a Waterlogged Grove, draw a land, drew Silvergill Adept, let's reveal a Lord, that resolves, drew an Aether Vial. Go ahead and play this Revoker naming Baby Teferi. And I'll play this Aether Vial too. All right, what does the opponent have? They're just passing the turn, which seems pretty decent for us. All right, not really feeling Snapcaster Ambush Viper here, so also they've got Celestial Colonnade, obviously, so play both Lords out. I think that I regretted not being a little more aggressive the previous turn before they played Teferi, so even though I'm naming Teferi with the Phyrexian Revoker, I really don't want him to be able to path the Revoker and then start getting value out of this guy again. Also, he turns off all of our counter spells, so took the opportunity to attack him. Force is decent. They just passed through. Vial up to 2. Drew another Aether Vial. Now, I think I was way more passive than I should have been again in this spot. So this Revoker, there's no more Teferi on the board. Even if the opponent... Well, maybe not. I guess I have my Island Walk going here. I think it was a good decision to leave the Phyrexian Revoker back, because even if the opponent has no cards in hand that could do anything, they can still just eat him. So better to leave the Revoker back. Opponent paths, and not really feeling that, because then they can just eat my creatures. But they have their own path, own force to counter my force. But now at least they can't activate Celestial Colonnade. I'm going to cycle the Relic here. Opponent takes 5. I've got a Mutavault to follow up with and a last Aether Vial. So opponent gets to field my Mutavault, thin the deck a little bit, and at this point we're both just top decking. The opponent rips a land. And now this is a situation where I believed I was too passive. Again, it's difficult to say, right? Because I guess I was correct in just attacking with the Silvergill Adept. The Celestial Colonnade does so much to keep us from getting in with this board here, because if I get in with everybody, he can just activate the Colonnade and eat the Lord. So best I can do is just get in with Silvergill Adept. I keep flooding out here, which seems to support my strategy of trimming 3 lands on the draw against blue-white and 2 on the play. Okay, so here's Big Teferi, and that has to be pretty much lights out. They get to draw another card, they get to untap lands. Way too many Aether Vials, way too many lands for me. Ugh. We have to switch to attacking Teferi. The opponent couldn't do anything about it, which is great for us. Opponent's going to draw another card with Teferi. Another card with Narset. I don't even want to show you guys what they revealed, but I will. A Jace, because why not? Okay, Aether Vials, don't really care. Drew another island. Ventilian Click. Now they choose to target themselves. Again, revealing a bit of weakness here. Their hand was not amazing. We know they have a Jace. So we're going to get in and try to kill this Teferi here. Of course they have a path on top of the Jace. And it's just, too much for us. They drew another Narset. This situation kind of shows where Spreading Seas could potentially be useful. Celestial Colonnade is going to be able to close this game out pretty quickly, whereas if we had a Spreading Seas to throw on it, it could slow it down a lot. Vendilion Click, though, is still just a 6-turn clock. I think the opponent probably could have done that no problem with 4.5 minutes. So I still think keeping the Spreading Seas out post-board is correct at this point. Okay, Narset drawing another card. Timely Reinforcements. So as I mentioned earlier, we have a decent matchup against blue-white control, but you need to play very carefully. You need to not try to draw extra cards on your turn when Narset is out. You need to use your counter spells extremely carefully. I believe it was in game 2, I used a Force of Negation against a Timely Reinforcements that I probably shouldn't have done. Could have saved it to counter one of their big planeswalkers. Yeah, anyhow, we're learning. Strengthening our strategy. Time is virtually identical on our clocks at this point, but opponent is obviously... Oh, and so I did remember with Waterlogged Grove to wait till the opponent's turn. Opponent gets to opt. He's going to activate Teferi. In response, I'll crack my Waterlogged Grove. Drew a Benthic Biomancer, which is kind of funny because it's the only thing that I can't vial in. What did the opponent draw off Narset that time? A Path to Exile. I think it's time for Jace. Just Celestial Colonnade. Makes a lot of sense. Get in for 7 in the air. And I was racing the clock and drew a Deprive. Decided to play Ben, and I think I activated him on my turn. It's so easy to forget about Narset, but hopefully you guys are learning from my misplays, because I know that I am. So I didn't get to draw a card. I just had to discard a card. And that was pretty much it. Opponent activates Celestial Colonnade, gets in for 7. They go for Path to Exile. I'm going to try to deprive it. They, of course, have counterspells since they have 7 cards in their hand at this point. Logic Knot, sure. Well done, opponent. Your strategy is working perfectly. And I guess I typically don't give up, so I go to my last draw step. Draw another Ben. Even though I can't loot on my turn, the opponent cryptics it, and that's lights out. So, very disappointing round 4 against blue-white control. I was a little trigger happy on the Force of Negation at one point in the match. I also, at the end of game 2, vialed in a Silvergill when I wasn't able to draw any more cards because of Narset. I also activated a Ben on my turn with a Narset out, so definitely things that I can improve. I think that there are sideboarding decisions that I can improve. Relics are definitely excellent against them with 4 Snapcasters. Being able to flashback a board wipe is just really disgusting. Being able to keep their graveyard empty is probably the best way to keep resources balanced in this matchup. We can counter their planeswalkers. Any ones that get through, we should be able to attack quickly and kill. But yeah, as you saw in both games, actually, I really flooded out towards the end, and yeah, I couldn't close things out. It's just so frustrating, you know, spending 45 minutes to just get ground out in the end, but it happens. So currently 3-1 in this league. Going into round 5, I'll have a chance, I guess, to go 4-1. I was hoping for the 5-0, but 4-1's pretty good, so I'll do my best to get there. Please leave your comments down below. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet, and please take a moment to check out my Patreon page. Pledge $1 or $2 if you'd like to support the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.